I think it's time that we learn to let our once legends rest in peace, rest in their humanity. I think it's time that people stop trying to dig up things from the concubines of our fallen heroes and try and discover some things that might have happened or might not have happened to tarnish their legacy, to make them lose a little bit of that high power, that high, illustrious mood that they gave us, that light that they gave us, and just let things go, especially when we get information about things that we kind of already knew. And then any information that might be new that we didn't know isn't really helping the subject case. Man. Welcome back, y'all, to the DeAndre Way. I appreciate y'all for coming through for this episode review of the untold story of the murder of Aaron McNair. Excuse me for reviewing myself twice. Untold, the murder of Aaron McNair. It was premiered on Netflix a few days ago, and this documentary was very, I want to say untelling, I guess you could say. A lot of the information that was presented was already known. A lot of the angles that was being made from seemed agenda pushing from a certain extent, depending on which lens you're looking through. And we get to see a few people who essentially are suspects in the murder. But this story is sad, y'all. It's just a sad, sad, sad story from every angle, from McNair to his family to the victims' families. It's a big mess, and it has been highly publicized. And if you don't know who Steve McNair is, he was a pro football player for the Tennessee Titans and the Houston Oilers. I'm a football fan, as you most likely know if you're on this channel. You've seen quite a few football things, but this is on Netflix, and anytime anything football is related to or coming on Netflix, y'all know a brother's gonna watch it and review it and talk about it and give my 2 cents. Now, my 2 cents is this thing should have probably never even been made. This documentary could have been left on the shelf, the cutting board, and this untold story could have went to something that was untold, not told. I think you're losing the sense of it's called Untold for a reason. Now, I feel like this documentary is a little all over the place. I've noticed a lot of things lately. They don't like to do chronological order anymore. They kind of like to go back and forth. Have you ever read those books growing up? I believe it was a series of unfortunate events where you read the page, you read the book, and at the bottom it says a little excerpt, and then go to this page to find out more about this. And then you go to like page 53, and then at the bottom of page 53 it says go to page 39. So you go back, and that's kind of what this felt like a little bit. And I just like a chronological thing. Now, I get flashbacks are important, but when it's going from 85 or no, 1995, whatever it was, to 2009 to 1997 to 2008, like, it's just a little too much. And then some things, there's quite a few things in here that felt unneeded and unwarranted. And this thing was only like 57, 58 minutes long. It wasn't even that long. But yet, it felt like it was dragging. So if something's less than an hour long, it feels like it's dragging, and it's only one thing, it's not like a series or episode, then Lord have mercy. But we'll get into it. The untold story of Aaron McNair, Robert Gaddy. We start with him. So Robert Gaddy is a man who pulls up to the apartment to find Steve McNair shot and killed along with this other mysterious woman. Now, the guy, apparently, he had keys to the apartment, and I believe he had keys. Aaron McNair, he either sold the home to McNair, or he was renting it out, one of the two. And so he was going in there to check it out, because that's just, you just walk in, get a beer, leave, and whatnot. And him and McNair had their relationship. When he gets in, he sees the bodies. And what does he do? He doesn't call the police. He calls this other dude He calls this guy named Wayne, or no, 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 no. He doesn't go in there to discover the bodies. Wayne Neely discovers the bodies. That's the guy. And he calls Robert Gaddy, and Robert's the one who calls the police. Now, that whole instance is very interesting. Why would you see dead bodies and not call the police? That's very suspicious. It feels like maybe he might not have done the murder himself, but he could have been an accomplice of some sort. That's where my antennas start going off. That's what they just start going off a little bit. So fishy off the get go. It's in downtown Nashville. You see the bullet holes. They even have in the documentary, a blueprint, not blueprint, a schematics basically of like where McNair got shot, like 2 in the cranium and then like 2 in the chest. So I believe it was 4 bullets in total. And they make a drawing of it and the girl's body on the ground to get a better description of it. Very horrific accident or incident. But yes, unfortunately, McNair was married with kids, and that was not his wife. Like I said, y'all, this story has a ton of ugly sides to it, and I could only imagine how McNair's wife was feeling about this. And maybe we don't know if she knew about the affairs or not. That's the thing. Maybe he did tell her about the affairs and they were technically married still, but they were not divorced. It's a possibility. It's a very big possibility. Happens a lot. But yeah, if she didn't know, then wow, that's insane. And even the kids, I feel worse because they have to deal with this. And the mother and the kids are the biggest victims in this whole entire story. And I wish we got to hear from her. Now, it's probably, it's been, what, 13, 14 years since this has happened. So maybe she's just like, I'm over it. I want to talk about it. I want to think about it. But that's a big angle that we're missing from this story is, did you have any idea about the girl? And that if she did, then maybe she could have had some assistance in trying to put this puzzle together. We don't know. But yeah, we don't hear from her. And then the kids are kind of grown at this point too. So I kind of wish we got to hear from one of them. But like I said, it's family. So I get it. But Netflix would have cut them a nice check for doing that. But hey, this is way more bigger than money. Way bigger than money. So the people find out that it is, police find out it's Steve McNair. It's all over the news, blasting, this, that, and the third. And the media was in a frenzy outside of his house, all over the country, essentially. I mean, if you were any kind of football fan, you knew who Steve McNair was. He was an NFL MVP. He was an HBCU legend. He played for the Tennessee Titans and took them to the Super Bowl and almost won the game. So everybody who knew anything about football, they knew who Steve McNair was. Now, we get Jeff Fisher. Jeff Fisher was Steve McNair's former head coach of the St. Louis 49ers, or St. Louis 49ers, St. Louis Rams, now Los Angeles Rams. He doesn't really add anything to this whole entire story. He was not needed. He was not helpful in putting this piece together. This thing was supposed to be talking about the murder, and he kind of just gave him the football side and propped him up and whatnot. That's fine and all. I think everybody knows what kind of player he was and what kind of person he was in the locker room. Never really had any incidents. Always a good teammate, uplifting guy. And all his segments just felt pointless, if I'm being quite frank. We did not need Jeff Fisher in this documentary. And even when they tried to get any of his thoughts about what had happened, he really wouldn't give much. He was just kind of just there. Oh, it's unfortunate. He was an amazing man. Let's move on. That's the vibes I was getting. He didn't give us any untold stories or untold anything. And even after the Super Bowl when they lost, he's like, I whispered something in his ear and nobody knows what it is until this day. And I was like, oh, I wonder what he said. And he's like, I love you, man. Like, that's it? That's all you said to him? That's what I figured he said. And it's like, he made it sound like it was some big secret. And like the media, even after the game, asked him, so what did you say to him after the game? And he's like, I don't think we should talk about that. That's between me and him. That's between coach and player. I love you is between coach and player. Like I said, he could have been left out. But Jeff Fisher explains how he gets into coaching. Pointless, not about him. He soon became the Oilers head coach. Pointless, not about McNair. Oilers had the number 1 pick. Pointless. That wasn't pointless. They had the number 3 pick. That was about McNair. And then they go into him. He's went to Alcorn State. He was called at Alcorn State. Drafted him 3rd overall pick. And yes, Wayne Neely was the friend. Let me get back because look. This is gonna be all over the place a little too because we're going back and forth. But yes, Wayne Neely called the police, like I said earlier, and we get some details. Like they said, the girl's truck wasn't there. Suspicious, but we don't hear anything more about that. Steve's truck was there, and he said Steve used this apartment for chilling. Now, I know what chilling is, Netflix and chill. So maybe I guess chilling was his Netflix and chill. Most likely, as that's what it seemed like he was doing. It was just funny he used that term. And so this is an interesting part. Wayne Neely and what's his name? Wayne Neely and Robert Gaddy were interviewed by the police. Not interviewed, interrogated by the police. And Wayne Neely, at the end of the interrogation, offered to pay the cops. Casually. Now, I don't know everything about the law enforcement, but I know bribery is pretty frowned upon. And they didn't take the money, but he did it in the first place, and it looked like a good amount of money. He's like, whatever y'all need, y'all want to. I think he said 10 racks. You know? That was just skimmed over and glossed over. That's untold, but we didn't get told about it. What's going on? I think definitely he has something more to do with it than we're deemed to believe in what this gave us. So, and the thing is, it doesn't help any of them nowadays to like, oh, like I was an accomplice in this and I did this. Why would they ever say that? So, somebody's in on this twisted game and they're not admitting it. Somebody is. We don't know. I think he has something to do with it. That's just me. Why would you bribe the police if you had nothing to do with it? Just seems 100 times suspicious. And then Robert was interviewed because apparently him and Steve had a falling out, and McNair, he had a debt to McNair of $13,000. Big thing. But I don't think his friend would, McNair's a millionaire. I don't think he's threatening him. But yes, an hour had gone by before the police was called when the discovery was made. So yeah, phone call only takes 5-10 minutes. Tell them what happened. So what happened with the next 50 minutes? We don't know. But yes, the woman's Escalade was towed from the apartment for some reason. We get more talks about McNair's football career. Doesn't really have anything to. It's like a quick bio, and talking about the murder. The football stuff really isn't important in this whole situation. Yes, he was quality, won the starting job, this, that, and the third. A lot of that stuff could have been left out. I'm interested about the crime and exactly everything that went down into it. They left out a bunch of little things that could have been said with the details behind the interrogations, the things at the scene, the crime scene, the other suspects. We could have went more in depth into them because that's what this story is about. And I hate when these documentaries get off track and talking about the glory days when that really didn't have anything to do with what's going on right now. Just me. But we found out this girl, Jenny, was this girl with McNair. Her real name is Sahil Kazemi. She worked at Dave & Buster's, and people called her Jenny, and this was his girlfriend, one of a couple. And they had photos of them popping up, too. People seen them in public. He wasn't really hiding the fact. Kind of crazy. But then again, that's the late 90s, or before social media really popped off. Like, it was really, really popping off, so he could afford to be doing all that. And apparently they were talking about having a future together, allegedly. Okay. But Steve was still married. So that's where this big puzzle piece is very confusing, because it's like, if you're talking about this, then I would imagine you're at least separated from your wife and not living in the same under the same roof. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but I feel like they weren't. I just feel like they weren't, because if they were, then the wife, I feel like, would have said something. I mean, that's not embarrassing on her part if she knew that they were or if she didn't know that they were separated, and then she has to, get her integrity back, get her respect and reputation back. But if they were separated and he was living in an apartment or somewhere else and she was living in the house, there's nothing really for her to say. Like, yeah, we were separated at the time, we were married, but else needs being open about it. So that I feel like that's the real story. That's just me. That's my suspicion. That's my hypothesis. And anywho, yes, the girls, but they find out the girl's ex was a person of interest because he could have been jealous, so he could have killed McNair. Little basic, little basic. I don't think you're gonna kill somebody because you're jealous of of somebody, especially if they're dating somebody like an A-listed football player, and you're just gonna kill him because you're jealous. So, them thinking the boyfriend was a suspect was insane and asinine. We get more talk about him playing football and playing through injuries, yada yada yada. They said the Titans would go into Dave and Buster's and holler at the girls, and that's pretty much probably how they met. And they say, like I said, they say the boyfriend game jealous. He was on there as well. He's like, no, like, yeah, I felt some type of way, actually. And anyone would, but I'm not going to kill the dude because I feel jealous. And then he just disappeared after the documentary after that. We get some more football things. They beat the Rams. They beat they beat Peyton Manning. They beat the Jaguars and went to the Super Bowl, this, that, and the third. They say the girl's from mom was murdered in Iran, where she is from. She had behavioral issues in the past. And the girl I'm talking about, Sahil Kazemi, the girl that died as well, or got killed, should I say. And she was asking him for help financially. She asked for $2,000 for her cell phone bill. God damn, $2,000. What kind of phone you got? I mean, Blackberries back in the day. I said blueberries. Blackberries back in the day, it wasn't that expensive. What was you doing? But you did have to pay a lot of fees back in the day, making them collect calls to Iran, apparently. But yes, Steve McNair had relations with other women as well. Crazy. This man was out in them streets, busting it wide open. Um, bust. Jenny found out there was other women Steve was seeing, so she became jealous now. So now she's losing herself in the music. Steve's like, look, I ain't loyal. I ain't loyal. He don't care. And she's young and dumb. She's 20 years old, so she don't know anything about nothing. And he was probably whispering a bunch of sweet nothings in her ear. That's why she fell for it. So it's dumb on her part, too. Like, you're going to mess with a married man. Like, what do you expect? He left his wife for you. What do you think he could possibly do to you? Far worse. Leave you out there with nothing when you need a lot. Don't mess with married people. It only leads to distress and tragedy. But yes, Jenny found out there was other women Steve was seeing, and a couple days before Steve was killed, Sahil got a DWI when Steve was in the car. This was interesting too. When got a DWI when Steve was in the car, and then after that, Steve kind of distanced himself. And you see in the video, the DWI video, he just gets out the car, and they let him call somebody to come pick him up and take him home, and she goes to jail. Now she probably was tight. He was probably in the car, and she was driving like, look, I ain't going to jail over you. I ain't getting in trouble because of you. I'm sliding. She's like, but what about me? You're not gonna stay with me? He's like, nah, I ain't doing that, girl. We done. He probably broke up with her in the car at that moment. And she could have had something to do with it too. I think maybe she's not thinking she's a 20-year-old girl. She doesn't have that much. I don't think she was that smart to like concoct a huge formulated plan behind anything. I don't think she's the one who killed them and killed herself, because she did say that she was having trouble with life, but I don't know. The thing is, we didn't hear much about seeing any footprints in the house. If they looked for footprints, apparently the police investigation behind it at the time was not very thorough, so they could have missed and glossed over a lot of things. Everything leads to her doing the shooting. Steve McNair would not do that to himself. I mean, he has kids and a wife still, and he has a great life. You know, he's a legend in the football space, so I don't see him doing that to himself. But maybe she did. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's a possibility. I'll just say it's a possibility. I still feel like somebody came in, boom, boom, set both of them up, and it all points leads to the guy that sold her the gun. That's what it leads to, because she was chatting with him, and maybe she was chatting with him on like, okay, where should I shoot him at? Where should I do this and that third? But we'll get there. But yes, the guy who sold her the gun is, I'm thinking he was definitely the main culprit. But we go back and get to a pointless argument about the Titans again, or a segment about the Titans. Titans apparently had some kind of parade. I don't know if that's when they moved to the Tennessee. Who knows? Who knows? This, that, and the third. But yes, Sahil purchased the gun at a pawn shop by this guy named Adrian Gilliam. He sold the gun to her, and at work the day before she died, she said to her manager that her life had just turned to shit and she should just end it. It's possible. It's possible. Steve then Sahil then so the investigation says Sahil killed Steve and then killed herself. It could look like that. They have the evidence to look at everything and whatnot, and I'd give that a high possibility of what did happen, and her motives behind it were like, look, you didn't help me out when I got pulled over for the DWI. I'm gonna get you back. Like I said, young and dumb, so she just acts irrationally and emotionally and doesn't really think about the consequences. And I mean, we could see that because when she got with him in the first place and she knew he was married, I feel like he would have told her that, and it would have been hard to hide. I mean, you could just Google him. Oh, he's married and has kids. Like, I'm pretty sure she knew everything. Um, but yes, but the thing is, Adam Gilliam got investigated and interrogated by the police, and the police pretty much believed everything he said about him not really knowing Sahil, him not having any contact with her. But he really had a lot of contact with her, a bunch of hundreds of phone calls and text messages that was found way later after. And he was a convicted felon before, I believe, for something. I can't remember exactly what he did, but not the best dude. Not the person you should be taking advice from. Just saying. Nashville police, boy. Boy. What's going on in Nashville, y'all? They apparently talked, Gilliam and Kazemi talked for 3 weeks, exchanging a ton of phone calls and text messages, and he lied about where he was at during the time of the murders as well. So this dude could have bumped up in there. He got the extra key from Sahil. Boom, pop, pop. I'm out. Maybe didn't even have to take too much steps within the house, depending on where they were sitting at in the house, where the couch was in the house. But yes, that's it. They get Robert regretting about the money situation, and we get Steve Hill, who is, I believe, the police investigator who realized everything else was awry and not making complete sense. So this story, like I said, it's all documented. It's all documented. It's all I've been out there for years. But there's still a lot of mystery behind it. And I think just the allure of Steve being NFL MVP, who he is, was the reason this story was pushed to the forefront for Netflix to retell it, even though a lot of it is already told, not untold. But I think that this story kind of needs to be laid to rest. The tragic incident of this man getting killed in one of his apartments, that's tragic enough. There's nothing we can do to bring him back. The only thing we can do is respect who he was and what he did and keep it at that. There's no reason to try and dig up skeletons under the dead and try and just torment them because they've already suffered the worst catastrophic blow that they could have ever had in their life. And so let's leave the rest of these legends and people who inspired and motivated people. Just leave them be and let them literally rest in peace, please. I'd give this documentary a 5.5 out of 10. Wasn't the best in my opinion. A lot of wasted space. Very short. A lot of open-ended ideas about what really could have happened. and no real conclusion about anything. I thought at the end we were gonna say like, oh, like this is the guy who really did it. No, we did not get that. We just still got a bunch of questioning and proverbial thoughts about what could or couldn't have happened. But y'all, that is it. That is my review of Untold, the story of Aaron McNair. I appreciate y'all for joining me. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the DeAndre. We hit 2,000 a few days ago, so I appreciate each and every one of y'all for tuning in. Let me know what you think about this documentary below in the comments. And we on to the next one, y'all. So peace, blessings, and have a great rest of